host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati.
All right. Happy Friday, guys. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday. I did not stream last night because I don't know, man, something's going around. I don't know what it is. Like I woke up Wednesday morning, actually both myself and my husband we woke up Wednesday morning sick. Body aches, like everything, the whole 9 yards. Let's use your imagination there. But I think something's going around because I noticed I think Kim wasn't feeling well. And I saw a post from Glenn Greenwald saying that he was just getting over something. And then I know there's other people that aren't feeling well as well. I don't know what's going on, man, but I'm still not 100% today. But I feel better than I did on Wednesday and definitely yesterday. I mean, I even had to... My voice is still coming, but I even had to drink orange juice, which I absolutely despise. I absolutely hate orange juice. So if you ever see me drinking orange juice, it's because I'm not feeling well. So I don't know if it's like the flu or what, but I thought maybe it was because the body aches or whatever, but I still had an appetite. So that's the other thing. I don't usually get the flu. That's the other thing too. I just usually don't get it. But I don't know, man. I don't know. But it was a doozy. So I still have the cough. I have a lingering cough. I have the sniffles. Yes, Sebastian, I hate orange juice. I don't like the way that orange juice tastes. The taste just lingers on my tongue. That's what I don't like about orange juice. Yeah, I know, ACB. I can still hear it in your voice. You need some hot tea. Yeah, I know. This is better than it was yesterday and Wednesday. Wednesday, I was definitely down for the count. Okay. I wasn't trying to talk to anybody on Wednesday. I don't even think I was really on social media much on Wednesday, but Wednesday I was down for the count. So yeah. Anyway, I am here tonight. So welcome, guys. We actually have a lot of foreign policy coverage to discuss tonight. Obviously, if you guys been paying attention to the news, the ICJ court case, which is incredibly important. You would think that mainstream media would be focusing on this as well and streaming this, but they're not. I think there's a reason for that. But we have a lot to discuss tonight. But really quick, I want to shout out Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also Sabbies in the house. And of course, members. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Vivi, Solomon Gali, and Linda Willies. I just love that last name, Willies. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate it. You are holding down the fort over here. So I do want to go. What in the world? Delthea says, put more vodka in the juice, Sabby. Won't cure anything, but it will make any sickness a pleasure to have. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into that thumbnail because the ICJ story actually is going to take up the most time tonight. I can go ahead and let you know about that. But tonight I am discussing BRIAHNA Joy Gray and Norm Finkelstein square off. So I don't know if you've seen that interview with Bree and Norm just yet. If you haven't seen it, though, there's one part of that interview that I do want to focus on where they kind of have a little bit of a debate there. We're also going to discuss the ICJ court case. So, yes, that's why you see a picture there of Netanyahu and also the leader of South Africa. We're also going to discuss Biden attacks Yemen, the Houthis as well, and of course, the NYC tunnels. So I finally get to cover that story. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. We're going to get started with this NC tunnel story because the thing is, I've wanted to cover this story for like the past couple of days. And when I first heard about the story, when I went live Tuesday night, I was like, oh, I don't know enough about it to cover it. I'll cover it on Thursday. Then I got sick on Wednesday. So I didn't get to cover it yesterday. I'm covering it tonight, damn it. We're getting into this tunnel story. So for those who are not aware, apparently, and I found out about this because the videos were trending on social media, but apparently there were tunnels that were found under an NYC synagogue. We're going to start off with a clip from ABC News talking about the underground tunnel. But there's something else I'm going to reveal to you tonight that you may not have heard yet if anyone's covered this story, because I just saw this released recently about who else made those tunnels. So let's go ahead and get into this clip here from ABC News. NYC synagogue ordered to vacate due to underground tunnel. Let's get into it.
And New York City's Department of Buildings is now issuing vacate orders to a synagogue over an illegal underground tunnel in the building. Police say 9 men were arrested on criminal mischief and reckless endangerment charges for using a hole they dug in the wall to access the Brooklyn synagogue during off hours. Brad Milkey, host of the Start Here podcast, is here with more on this. Brad, this all came about because police were responding to reports of a damaged wall and a disorderly group outside. So how did that turn into a secret passageway? And what else do you know about what this was being used for?
Yeah, this is a really wild story, Diane. And I think a lot of New Yorkers don't even know when they pass this brick synagogue in Crown Heights in Brooklyn that they're passing one of the most significant religious sites in the city. So this has stood for decades as the center of the Chabad Lubavitcher movement, which is known worldwide. In fact, attracts worshipers from all over the world who come and pray at this synagogue and come and worship. Some people get visas to study at the yeshiva here. And so what leaders of the synagogue found out recently, apparently, was that some followers, some members had built a secret tunnel going from other buildings into this space, which was shocking to them. They decided.
We're just going to pause here. Notice, I want you to see something really quick. Notice the gentlemen up here. Notice how they're recording this on their cameras. That's how you can tell they didn't know. Not everyone knew these tunnels were there.
Tunnel going from other buildings into this space, which was shocking to them. They decided this wasn't okay with the leaders of the synagogue. They bring in a cement mixer to fill it all in. And that's when there's this huge confrontation. Men, as if they were protecting sort of a tree in the forest from being torn down, they actually sit in the tunnel itself to keep it from being filled in. Police are called. There's actually a huge brawl at the site. At one point, people were tearing off pieces of wood to kind of create a barricade. And eventually that results in actually a scuffle with police. Irritant gas is used, and then arrests are made. So really an unbelievable situation that actually exposed some pretty deep fissures in this pretty insular community.
So how are officials from this synagogue responding now?
Well, this actually created a pretty deep divide, or exposed a divide that's been there for years, because you have to sort of understand about this religious sect to understand why this tunnel was even being perhaps made, is that for years, this site at 770 East Park Eastern Parkway, was led by this world-famous rabbi known simply as the Rebbe, who created all this. He died in 1994, but until then he had been arguing for this site to be expanded, saying we need more space. It's actually a pretty cramped space for the number of followers who are there. Well, there are some members of this sect who believe that the Rebbe's not dead. In fact, they see him as a living Messiah, and so in honor of him, there are even disputes over whether they should put a plaque up at the synagogue saying he was dead, because some people said no, he's not. And so,
you know, religion can have people do some strange things. And this is not to, you know, pick on one sect over another. But religion, you know, in every denomination, I feel like there's always like that one segment of that denomination that just goes a little bit above and beyond and does some pretty crazy stuff, right?
there were arguments over whether, you know, we should expand this site. Some people thought it was moving too slowly, and so some have speculated that some of these sort of young, more extremist men, younger guys, some of them perhaps even from Israel, decided in his honor to build this tunnel. The synagogue says it's a terrible look for the entire religion, for the entire site, and that's why they're so worried, especially considering these guys might have done more harm than good. Like you said, they're issuing that vacate order.
Now, Brad, this tunnel connects 4 neighboring buildings. So have any other buildings been impacted here, and what happens next?
Well, that's what they're trying to figure out right now. In fact, that's why the other day, the Department of Buildings did say that the structural integrity of this synagogue has been affected. And so they're warning people to stay away from this site. And so that's why, again, there's such a deep divide in this community, because if people thought they were trying to help the late Rebbe's vision, it certainly hasn't helped, the reputation or the physical stability of the site.
And New York City's Department.
When I first heard about the tunnels, the first thing I thought of when someone said it was New York City, the first thing I thought of was someone created tunnels in New York City. And I thought about the little furry friends, I thought about all the rodents in New York City, and I was like, I wouldn't want to go in those tunnels. I wouldn't want to go there. But I want to show you another clip as well. Like, this is the first time that I saw it, and I was like, what the hell is going on in NYC? I was like, secret tunnels. This is the video, I think, that went viral, so to speak. I think this was the first video that I saw. And I was like, are people crawling out of this tunnel? Check this out. And it just, so then this video, this image here, people have actually made memes out of it. I saw someone made a video. I can't play it on here because of the copyright, but someone made a video with him crawling out of this tunnel, and they were using the theme to Super Mario Brothers. How Super Mario pops out of the tunnel and stuff. People have created all kind of memes, but this was just wild and crazy. I was like, what is happening here? Yo. So this is the part here where some of the members actually, that's what the gentleman was saying, where they actually climbed into this portion to prevent them from trying to, I guess, destroy the tunnels that existed there. This is wild.
Not gonna help. They try to. Back up. Sitting up.
that was one of the images that I saw, but then there was another one that I think really made people question things. And shout out to Solomon. Solomon has been on the show before. He was the one that I saw posted this: mattresses with stains found in tunnels under a synagogue in New York. And this is the one that I think gave a lot of people pause. You know, they had mattresses in this tunnel. Look at this. You see this? So it's this mattress in particular that a lot of people are pointing to because there is a stain on it also. I believe that has been collected. They've actually tested that mattress for forensics, if last time I checked, because we don't know what that stain could be. We don't know. We just don't know. But why did these tunnels have mattresses inside the tunnels? Right? That is very suspect, very strange, just weird to me. And it, you know, people have jumped to all different types of conclusions. Now, I want to show you something else too, because there's another video that goes a little bit deeper in the tunnels. Let me pull this up here because some people believe, including Pelham here. Pelham says it's now almost certain the tunnels found in the Chabad synagogue in Brooklyn were designed for child sex trafficking. Now, we don't have, allegedly, because we don't have any evidence of that, but there's some things here that don't make any sense, like the baby high chairs. Watch this, because this is the part where I think a lot of people may not have seen. As they go further into the tunnel, it's not like it was just a tunnel that they were hanging out in. And you'll see how deep this goes. You can see there. Like, this is wild, man. This is wild. And like, what was happening here? And that's the thing. It's just like, there's another hole there. You see this? Yeah. So what Pelham said, and I just wanted to make sure I finish the rest of this. Pelham said this footage release shows the Jewish synagogue had dystopian tunnels made with stained mattresses that have been sent for forensic analysis. So they've sent that out. Items such as baby high chairs and clothing have also been taken by forensics. A group of extremist students were blamed for the child abduction tunnels and attempted to bury the tunnels with cement before forensics could begin their investigation. So that's the part there that is very concerning. Like, if you didn't do anything wrong, if there was no wrongdoing, why would they try to go to such extremes to bury the tunnels so that the forensics could not be done? That's the part that people need to ask. People need to find out what actually happened in these tunnels. And also, what's important for people to know, you need to know who helped build these tunnels, because it wasn't just those gentlemen that were a part of the synagogue, and not everyone that was a part of the synagogue did that. But you also need to know this part of the story. Now, this information was released yesterday. Extremist Jewish teens secretly hired migrants to dig covert Brooklyn synagogue tunnel, Shawshank style. I kid you not. Look who they got to do the work. This gets even deeper, you guys. So again, I'm glad I didn't actually cover this on Tuesday because more information has been released. Let's get to this part right here. 6 renegade members of Shabbat Hasidic movement secretly began digging the 3-foot high, 20-foot wide, 50-foot long tunnels themselves using crude instruments and their hands. They stuffed the dirt into their pockets so that their work wouldn't be detected by the sex leaders and wider community. This is how far they were willing to go. You've seen the movie The Shawshank Redemption. That's what these young men did at first. They dug and put the dirt in their pockets. Later, the men, most of them in their teens and early 20s, took up a collection and hired a group of migrant laborers to finish the job. They described the workers as Mexicans. So you see what's happening here? You see how they got migrants to help finish the job for them? It goes on more here. So you can see more pictures here of the tunnels. It's something else, man. You see the high chair? That's a high chair turned upside down. Very odd. The workers, listen to this part. The workers lived at an abandoned building that contained a men's ritual bath near Shabbat World Headquarters at 770 Eastern Parkway, known in the community simply as 770 for the duration of the clandestine work. The Mexicans lived in the building for 3 weeks during the work. They slept and ate there because it was a secret operation. So this is wild. Like, nobody knew that they were living in this building. Another Shabbat member said he was shocked by how they managed to hide it. I was surprised by the stealth and secrecy of it all, said a 38-year-old Shabbat member who did not want to be identified. It's incredible to me that they kept it under wraps. The yeshiva boys are very idealistic extreme. So here's the building here. So basically, long story short, they hired migrants to finish the job of those tunnels. And they also had them living in the building, and nobody else at the synagogue even knew they were living there. Secret operation. It goes on to say some of the students are on visas from Safed, a holy city in Israel that is considered to be the birthplace of Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism. The controversy over the clandestine construction project exploded earlier this week when members of the community discovered the tunnel and brought in cement workers to fill it in. On Monday, wild scenes broke out as the NYPD was called after some of the students tried to prevent the laborers from entering the tunnel. 9 men ages 19 to 21 were arrested for criminal mischief and reckless endangerment. And remember what they said earlier in the article is that some of the men weren't even from Brooklyn. Some of them were from Israel. Some time ago, a group of extremist students broke through a few walls in adjacent properties to the synagogue. Now that's at 784 to 788 Eastern Parkway to provide them unauthorized access. This is wild, man. This is wild. It goes on to say, said Rabbi Mati, spokesman for Shabbat, in a statement to the Post on Tuesday. He did not return a subsequent request for comment Wednesday. So it's just, I find it very, especially in New York, because New York is dense. Even Brooklyn, I lived in Brooklyn. Brooklyn's still dense. And I find it hard to believe nobody heard any of the noise, any of the commotion. Someone's digging tunnels, and the buildings that are connected to the 770 Crown Heights building, they don't hear anything. Nothing at all. And what's wild about this too is that, never forget this, guys. They hired migrants to finish the job. Whew. Religion can make people do some crazy things. That's all I'm going to say. Religion can make people do some crazy things. Thank you for the super chat, Sean. Good morning from Scotland. What's going on, Sean? Terrell says, Sabby Sabs, they would have never gotten away with this in pre-gentrified New York City. Thank you for the super chat, M. Smith. Imagine if that was a black church with black men pushing back. Oof. And thank you for the super chat. So, first of all, M. Smith, they wouldn't have lived to tell that story. Thank you for the super chat, Snork. Were the Mexicans killed after the job? Probably not. I don't think so. And Rick says, are we lazy or we build tunnels? Make up your mind, America. It's a good point, Rick. Good point. Aye. It's just wild, man. That is a wild story. And we're moving on to probably the wildest story from this week. As you know, South Africa decided to take Israel to the ICJ for genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Now, obviously, South Africa would know what a genocide looks like. They also know what apartheid looks like. So I feel like they're the right people to call this case to trial. Before the hearing even started on Wednesday, Netanyahu released a statement, mainly so to protect himself and to protect the state of Israel. Make no mistake, this statement that you're about to hear from Netanyahu was an attempt for him to do some type of damage control and to protect the reputation that the state of Israel has. And the reason why I say that is because we have seen time and time again, Joe Biden has already made this statement as well, is that the state of Israel is losing support because of the genocide against Gaza. Plus, more Americans are waking up to the history. So before we get into highlights from the hearing, let me show you the statement that Netanyahu made before the hearing started. Listen to this.
I want to make a few points absolutely clear. Israel has no intention of permanently occupying Gaza or displacing its civilian population. Israel is fighting Hamas terrorists, not the Palestinian population. And
right out the gate, telling multiple lies. Right out the gate. Something that I will show you as we get into the highlights from the ICJ is that Israel actually is its greatest enemy. You know, there was a song called My Own Worst Enemy. You guys remember that song from, I forget the name of the band. Lit? Was the name of the band Lit? They had this song called My Own Worst Enemy. Tell me why I'm my own worst enemy. The state of Israel is its own worst enemy because the rhetoric that has come out of their mouths has brought them to this point right now with the ICJ. So when Netanyahu makes the statement and he says that we have no intentions of taking over Gaza, we've only been targeting Hamas and not civilians, that contradicts statements that he's made prior to this announcement here. So Israel is its own worst enemy. No one else but them. Let me let him finish here.
we are doing so in full compliance with international law. The IDF is doing its utmost to minimize civilian casualties, while Hamas is doing its utmost to maximize them by using Palestinian civilians as human shields.
Lying again. So he's saying that they're trying to minimize civilian casualties, but they're constantly targeting civilians. How are you minimizing civilian casualties if you're constantly targeting civilians?
The IDF urges Palestinian civilians to leave war zones by disseminating leaflets, making phone calls, providing safe passage corridors.
Yes, you encourage them to leave those areas. And then when they go to the areas that you told them to go to, you also bomb those areas as well. This man is a blatant liar. If you guys have been paying attention to everything we've been covering about this particular issue, even before October 7th, Zionists are notorious liars. Notorious liars. People have to understand This is the final phase of the colonizer project. This is the final phase. Push the Palestinians out of Israel, kick them out of the West Bank, get them out of Gaza, and thus that opens the door for Netanyahu to have this vision of the greater Israel brought to light. Notorious liars.
Hamas prevents Palestinians from leaving at gunpoint and often with gunfire. Our goal is to rid Gaza of Hamas terrorists and free our hostages. Once this is achieved, Gaza can be demilitarized and de-radicalized, thereby creating a possibility for a better future for Israel and Palestinians alike. I want to make a few points.
So again, this was a damage control statement. Why does he feel the need to make this statement right before the ICJ hearing, right? So let's get into some of the points that the Human Rights Organization is making about the ICJ case. Now, this is from Case Study QB. Shout out to Case for this. I was actually surprised. They actually had Human Rights Watch on the Joy Reid show. So this was actually on MSNBC. Listen to what she said. This is important.
Today, as U.S. media attention has been largely focused on Donald Trump or Hunter Biden, around the world, a major hearing with massive implications, which began at the International Court of Justice at The Hague, is a much bigger story. As lawyers for the Republic of South Africa laid out their case that Israel's bombardment of Gaza amounts to genocide.
For the past 96 days, Israel has subjected Gaza to what has been described as one of the heaviest conventional bombing campaigns in the history of modern warfare. They are also at immediate risk of death by starvation, dehydration, and disease as a result of the ongoing siege by Israel, the destruction of Palestinian towns, the insufficient aid being allowed through to the Palestinian population, and the impossibility of distributing this limited aid while bombs fall.
During the 3-hour hearing, South Africa argued that Israel has not only committed genocidal acts, but also acted with genocidal intent, using public statements by members of the Israeli government to make their case.
Let me just pause here for a second, too. Notice one of the things that was mentioned at the hearing was also not just the issue about the bombing, but also the starvation issue. You can commit genocide without bombing people. If you starve an entire group of people, that's also committing genocide as well. Israel has been doing both.
Of the Knesset have repeatedly called for Gaza to be wiped out, flattened, erased, and crushed on all its inhabitants. They have deplored anyone feeling sorry for the uninvolved Gazans, asserting repeatedly that there are no uninvolved, that there are no innocents in Gaza, that the killers of the women and children should not be separated from the citizens of Gaza, and that the children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves, and that there should be one sentence for everyone there, death.
South Africa also asked the ICJ to impose a preliminary order to stop the violence in Gaza while the case plays out, which could take years. Israel, which has vehemently denied all of these allegations, will present its defense tomorrow. Joining me now is Tarana Hassan, Executive Director of Human Rights Watch. Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Hassan. I did watch these hearings today, and it was dramatic, particularly the second gentleman that you saw when he began quoting ministers in the Israeli government, including the Prime Minister. How much could those words wind up playing, or how could those words wind up playing out in these hearings?
Well, I mean, South Africa has made the charge in front of the United Nations highest court that Israel military operations have resulted in violations of the Convention of Genocide, but also it's saying that these statements that you heard being read out by Israeli political and military officials amount to evidence of a clear intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza as a group, in part or in whole. And that is what the case for genocide turns on. And
so, as I said before, Israel is its own worst enemy.
So what South Africa is saying is that there is a clear reference from the acts of the Israeli military on the ground and those genocidal statements and directives are actually being implemented in the military operations on the ground. And they're also arguing that Israel is not doing enough to prevent genocide, which they believe is an obligation under the Genocide Convention.
And the death toll right now is 23,469 estimated dead since the October 7 attacks, 56,604 wounded, more than 7,700 missing under rubble. And that's according to Gaza's media offices. Let's talk about the coalitions at play here. Supporting South Africa, the countries that include Saudi Arabia, the 56 members of the Islamic cooperation, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Bolivia, and Venezuela, supporting Israel, the U.S., Germany, and Austria. It seems significant.
Let's think about, again, the countries supporting Israel. Let's go back to this part real quick. Listen to the countries supporting Israel. This is very telling, you guys.
Media offices. Let's talk about the coalitions at play here. Supporting South Africa, the countries that include Saudi Arabia, the 56 members of the Islamic cooperation, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Bolivia, and Venezuela, supporting Israel, the U.S., Germany, and Austria.
Supporting Israel, the U.S., Germany, and Austria. Think about that. Germany, for one, by the way, Germany, you know, you were like my second home, but I think you really need to fall back and not be involved in this. Germany has also announced that they plan to present its own case to the ICJ to defend Israel. I don't know if everyone heard that news that broke today. Sorry, Germany, but read the room. You probably have no right to comment on this situation about genocide at all. Because let's be real. Let's be real. Even though you made attempts and you took steps to atone for what was done to Jewish people in reference to the Holocaust, let's keep it real. I didn't see you try to give them your land. Did you? You guys ever notice that? Germany never offered to give them part of the land in Germany. Fall back. Fall back. This is not one for you. Not one for you. But notice Saudi Arabia is siding with South Africa. The United States still sees Saudi Arabia as an ally. So I told you guys before, this whole idea of Saudi Arabia wanting to join BRICS, things were starting to change. But Germany, Austria, and the United States siding with Israel. In other words, they are siding with the oppressor. So Germany, you didn't learn anything. You think you learned something, but you really didn't. You just went to siding with one oppressor to siding with another oppressor. Because although at that point in time, where there was no Israel per se at that point in time, at that point in time, obviously, those people were not the oppressor. Obviously, you can't say Jewish people are oppressors. The government is the problem. The state of Israel is the problem. So Germany just went from siding with one oppressor to siding with another oppressor. So they really did not learn anything. The United States siding with the oppressor. Miss me with the whole, we're a melting pot in this country. Yes, we're a melting pot that still sides with oppressors. Just remember that. Austria siding with the oppressor.
It seems significant that Saudi Arabia is on that list. They were looking for a kind of normalization with Israel not that long ago. What are the significances of these coalitions?
Well, I think actually if we want to talk about the significance of the coalitions in relation to this case, we should look at the parties of the Genocide Convention who have welcomed South Africa's application. And they include Bangladesh, Bolivia, Jordan, Malaysia, the Maldives, Pakistan, Turkey, Venezuela. And you're right, the OIC also issued a statement, but also France's UN ambassador in New York said that France is a strong supporter of the International Court of Justice and would back the court's decisions. And I think the important thing to take away from this is that, this is an independent court, and it will hear this very important case based on its merits. And because, as we've said in the beginning, that the threshold to prove intent and the crime of genocide is quite difficult to prove, this is exactly the reason why the International Court of Justice case is so important. We know, as you were talking about, the death count is terribly high. We know that thousands of civilians have been killed, and amongst those thousands of children. So the situation on the ground is so grave that it does merit the World Court scrutiny.
Yeah, this is.
And also another thing I want to mention, when you look at Human Rights Watch, remember, this is the same organization that said that what Israel was doing to the Palestinian people was an issue. They called this out years ago. This did not happen on October 7th. They have already declared that it was a human rights violation and that people should be concerned about what was happening to the Palestinian people. Human Rights Watch. So Joy Reid brings this woman on the show to have this conversation, but she tailors all of this to October 7th. And my thing is, if you have Human Rights Watch on your show, why not use that opportunity to talk to them about the claims that they made before, how the Palestinian people were being treated? Why? Because MSNBC is not going to let Joy go that far. That's why Mehdi Hassan is no longer there. Think about that. Do you think if that woman came on the Mehdi Hassan show on MSNBC, do you think Mehdi Hassan would have not brought up the statements from the Human Rights Watch about what Israel was doing to the Palestinian people? No, he probably would have. So they have her go on Joy's show. Now, this gentleman, before we get into the highlights as well, I want you to hear what Francis Boyle said, because Francis Boyle actually comes forward and says that South Africa could actually win because they have a very strong case. And also, he himself has been through this before. He was on Democracy Now! I want you to hear what he says about this case with the ICJ and why he believes that South Africa could win.
Audience, not to toot my own horn here, but I was the first lawyer ever to win anything under the Genocide Convention from the International Court of Justice that goes back to 1921. I single-handedly won 2 world court orders for the Republic of Bosnia-Herzegovina against Yugoslavia to cease and desist from committing all acts of genocide. And
hold on to that part there about Bosnia, because that's going to come up again.
Based on my careful review of all the documents so far submitted by the Republic of South Africa, I believe South Africa will win an order against Israel to cease and desist from committing all acts of genocide against the Palestinians. And then we will have an official determination by the International Court of Justice itself, the highest legal authority in the United Nations system, that genocide is going on. And under Article 1 of the Genocide Convention, all contracting parties, 153 states, will then be obliged, quote, to prevent, unquote, the genocide by Israel against the Palestinians.
Now, my question is, how does that implicate the United States? Because does that mean that the U.S. would have to stop sending weapons to Israel? Just something to think about.
Second, when the World Court gives this cease and desist order against Israel, the Biden administration will stand condemned under Article 3, Paragraph E of the Genocide Convention that criminalizes complicity in genocide. And clearly, we know that the Biden administration has been aiding and abetting Israeli genocide against the Palestinians here for quite some time.
So you guys have heard that, right? Okay. That's important that he called out the Biden administration, because that's going to make more sense later on. I want to start with the opening argument from the ICJ. Now that you've seen all of that, we're going to play just a little bit of it because it is quite lengthy. Listen to the opening piece. This was on the first day, and then we'll get into some of the comments that have been made in reference to Israel's defense.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his address to the Israeli forces on 28 October 2023, preparing for the invasion of Gaza, urged the soldiers to remember what Amalek has done to you. This refers to the biblical command by God to Saul for the retaliatory destruction of an entire group of people known as the Amalekites.
So that's another example of Israel being its own worst enemy. That statement was made by Netanyahu. It's on video. He can't say he didn't say that, or he could, and he'll just be lying again. But there's evidence that you did say that. Now you can't come back and say, well, that's not what I meant. No, that was exactly what Netanyahu meant. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. South Africa, they basically are using Israel's own words against them. If you think about it, like just running off at the mouth, some of the statements that have been made by IDF soldiers, statements that have been made by Netanyahu, statements that have been made by Netanyahu's advisor, it's just, they basically have told on themselves. And for the longest time, they feel like we will not be held accountable anyway, so we can say whatever we want. So kudos to South Africa for having the balls, and yes, I'm saying balls, having the balls to take Israel to court. Kudos to South Africa.
Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. The genocidal invocation to Amalek was anything but idle. It was repeated by Mr. Netanyahu in a letter to the Israeli Armed Forces on 3 November 2023. The Deputy Speaker of the Knesset, Israel's parliament, has called for the erasure of the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. The Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, gave a situation update to the army, where he said that as Israel was imposing a complete siege on Gaza, there would be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything would be closed because Israel is fighting human animals. The theme of destruction of human animals was reiterated by an Israeli army coordinator of government activities in the territories on 9 October 2023, who, in an address to Hamas and the residents of Gaza, stated that Hamas has become ISIS and that the citizens of Gaza are celebrating instead of being horrified. He concluded that human animals are dealt with accordingly. The language of systematic dehumanization is evident here. Human animals.
You hear that? See, again, this is just them using Israel's words against them, their own words. Human animals, calling the Palestinian people human animals, the same thing that was said to black people, right? It's the same thing that people will say to black people, that we were animals. Zionism in its own form is supremacy. People have to understand that. Let's go on a little bit
Both
more here.
Hamas and civilians are condemned. The Minister of Energy and Infrastructure, Israel Katz, called for the denial of water and fuel, as this is what will happen to a people of children killers and slaughterers. This admits of no ambiguity. It means to create conditions of death of the Palestinian people in Gaza. To die a slow death because of starvation and dehydration, or to die quickly because of a bomb attack or snipers, but to die nevertheless. Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu said that Israel must find ways for Gazans that are more painful than death.
You hear these words? These are all the statements that they made. Must find ways for Gazans to suffer, or ways that are more painful for them other than death. You hear this? These are their words.
As President Isaac Herzog has joined the ranks of those signing bombs destined for Gaza, having previously noted that the entire population in Gaza is responsible, and that this rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved, is absolutely not true. We will fight until we break their backbone. The Minister of National Security repeated the President's statements that Hamas and civilians are responsible in equal measure. On 10 November 2023, in a televised interview, he stated that when we say that Hamas should be destroyed, it also means those who celebrate, those who support, and those who hand out candy.
So you hear what he just said? That was another statement that was made. They've been watching the interview. See, South Africa actually did their homework. And a lot of these representatives from the state of Israel, they've done a lot of interview appearances, and they've made some statements that did not resonate well with a lot of people. And so South Africa actually did gather a lot of evidence. They've been paying attention to what's his name? Mark Regev, Netanyahu's prime minister, the things that he said on interviews, the things that this is why like Alan Dershowitz was on this podcast tour. This is what I was trying to tell you guys, that Alan Dershowitz was basically out there trying to defend Netanyahu, trying to defend the state of Israel, even though Alan Dershowitz knows damn well what Israel was doing is wrong. He was supposed to be the one to go out there and to try to turn things around, but he didn't do a good job either. You see what I mean? So all these interviews, all these appearances that they made, South Africa basically took notes and they said, okay, we got you.
They are all terrorists, and they should also be destroyed. The genocidal intent behind these statements is not ambiguous to the Israeli soldiers on the ground. Indeed, it is directing their actions and objectives. These are the soldiers repeating the inciting words of their prime minister.
You see this? They even had the video footage of the IDF soldiers saying there are no uninvolved civilians. And when you make that statement, that obviously gives them the excuse to say that they're targets as well. Now, you compare this to the speech that Netanyahu just gave before the ICJ court case started. Obviously, Netanyahu is lying. This is actually what they believe. There are no uninvolved civilians. They just want the Palestinian people gone, period.
Soldiers obviously believe that this language and their actions are acceptable because the destruction of Palestinian life in Gaza is articulated state policy. Senior political and military officials encouraged without censure the 95-year-old Israeli army reservist Ezra Yachin, a veteran of the Deir Yassin massacre against the Palestinians in 1948, to speak to the soldiers ahead of the ground invasion in Gaza. I quote, "Be triumphant and finish them off, and don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them erased them, their families, mothers, and children.
See that? They went all the way back to 1948. They went back to then. This is why I said South Africa really did their homework. So they are actually quoting what the soldiers were saying about the Palestinian people back then. There was no Hamas then. For the people who say, but Hamas, there was no Hamas then. So what was the excuse then other than supremacy?
These animals can no longer live. If you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait, go to his home and shoot him. We want to invade, not like before. We want to enter and destroy what's in front of us, and destroy houses, then destroy the one after it. With all of our forces, complete destruction, enter and destroy. Any suggestion that senior politicians did not mean what they said, much less that the meaning was not understood by soldiers in Gaza, would be without any merit. The scale of destruction in Gaza, the mass targeting of family homes and civilians, the war being a war on children, all make clear that genocidal intent is both understood and is being put into practice.
Okay, we're not going to play the entire thing because it is rather long, but that was part of the opening speech. Now I played that, and I want you to hear these lies that Israel tells when it's their turn to defend. I want you to hear this is just, oh my God, this is really bad. This is really bad. It is an ongoing ICJ court hearing. The Israeli legal team claims that the regime forces have not conducted any. Listen to this yourself. This is wild. I told you, just lie after lie after lie. This is their defense.
Hospitals have not been bombed. Rather, the IDF sent soldiers to search and dismantle military infrastructure, reducing damage and disruption. Indeed, the tunnel that sat directly under the main building in Shifa Hospital was exploded without damaging the building above. The IDF then withdrew from the hospital. Hospitals have not been bombed. Rather, the IDF sent soldiers to search and dismantle military infrastructure.
Ladies and gentlemen, haven't we seen videos over time and time again of hospitals being bombed in Gaza? Haven't we seen live coverage of hospitals being bombed in Gaza? So let me tell you how they messed up, okay? Let me tell you how they messed up. How many officials have you seen from the state of Israel have interviews with CNN and MSNBC, etc.? And when they were asked about the hospitals, they said, one second. Sorry, guys, I'm still getting over the cold. I still have the cough. When they were asked about the hospitals, they said that Hamas was operating in those hospitals. So that gave them the excuse to bomb the hospitals. Now she's saying they didn't bomb any hospitals. See how they just continue to lie? Lie, lie, lie.
Reducing damage and disruption. Indeed, the tunnel that sat directly under the main building in Shifa Hospital was exploded without damaging the building above. The IDF then withdrew from the hospital.
Okay, so you guys have caught that one. That's the first really big one, really big lie that a lot of people are like, have caught, right? And I want to go to this piece here. Now, this is Ronald. Another highlight from the court case. Listen to this one. This is really good as well.
The Palestinians have experienced systematic oppression and violence for the last 76 years. On 6 October 2023, and every day since October the 7th, 2023. In the Gaza Strip, at least since 2004, Israel continues to exercise control over the airspace, territorial waters, land crossing, water, electricity, and civilian infrastructure, as well as over key government functions. Entry and exit by air and sea to Gaza is strictly prohibited. with Israel operating the only two crossing points. Given that continuing effective control by Israel and over the territory of Gaza, the Palestinians have experienced systematic oppression and violence for the last 76 years.
So that piece I thought was very important. The fact that this has been a problem for 76 years. And why did I think it was so important that he said that? Because most of the people that are going to speak in reference to defending Israel are going to report this back to it all started on October 7th. If it wasn't for October 7th, this would have never happened. So he is there to take it back and let you know what the Palestinian people have been living with for the past 76 years. That piece right there is incredibly important. Like I said, they came prepared. Eric, I'm ready for part 2 whenever you are. They came prepared. And you'll notice again, like I said, Israel, and there's another statement you'll see from them as well. Israel, I feel they've been telling on their self. How can you sit up there and say that you didn't bomb the hospitals and you actually had officials from the state of Israel admit to bombing the hospitals on major news networks? This is why I said these people are just lying. Now, when I tell you that they're going to be their own worst enemy because of their own words, listen to something that Rashida Tlaib said about Israel's rhetoric. And this will be the thing that really does them in. Listen to this.
Today, Mr. Speaker, South Africa will present its case against the Israeli government at the International Court of Justice. And I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the case.
Without objection.
It is incredibly powerful to witness people who defeated apartheid in their own country hold the Israeli apartheid regime accountable for its crime of genocide in Gaza. Today, I'm thinking of Nelson Mandela's powerful words, quote, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." In the past 3 months, Israeli forces have killed over 23,350 Palestinians, including more than 9,600 children. They have injured more than 59,400 Palestinians. More than 8,000 Palestinians are still missing under the rubble. This week, Secretary of State Blinken called the case meritless. So let me read directly from the case file, starting on page 59. Quote, "Expressions of genocidal intent against the Palestinian people by Israeli officials," so you can hear directly from the Israeli officials in their own words, not mine.
See? This is what I was telling you guys about.
President Herzog said, quote, "It is an entire nation out there that is responsible. It is not true, this rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved. It is absolutely not true. And we fight until we break their backbone." He's one of the many Israeli officials that have handwritten messages on the bombs to be dropped on the children of Gaza. Netanyahu said in his own words, quote, "A struggle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle."
There was that one. That was racist as hell. Like, just keeping it real.
And quote, he continues to say, "This is a battle not only of Israel against these barbarians, but it's a battle of civilization against the barbarism." Israel's Minister of Defense, quote, said, "Imposing a complete siege on Gaza, no electricity, no food, no water, no food. Everything is closed," he says. "We are fighting human animals." Again, direct quote from the Minister of Defense.
Their own words.
Continues on to say, "Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything." Israeli Minister for National Security, again, an official within the Israeli government, speaking of those living in Gaza, he said, quote, "They're all terrorists and they should all be destroyed." Israeli Minister of Energy and Infrastructure said, quote, "All the civilian population in Gaza is ordered to leave immediately. They will not receive a drop of water or a single battery until they leave the world."
Now, that one is probably one of the most blatant ones when they cut off the water. They will not receive a drop of water until they leave the world. How can you, again, the reason why they've been able to say the things that they've said, those quotes that she's read so far, the reason why they've been able to make those statements is because, again, no other country has held Israel accountable. Do you think the Palestinian people, the people being dragged out of their homes in the West Bank, the people being oppressed in Gaza, if other countries had been standing up for the Palestinian people all along, it would have never gotten to this point. It got to this point because people gave the state of Israel a pass. And we need to start asking ourselves, what does it really mean to be a nation state? Is that a good thing? And for who? And how do you take over someone else's land, kick them off their property, make it your own state, and then just act as if these people never existed there? These people don't have the right to return. This is crazy shit. Like, if you guys really think about this just for a second. Think about it. We would not allow that to happen in this country. We would not allow that to happen in the United States. So why have so many countries for the past couple of years, why have so many countries allowed Israel to do this apartheid shit? Why have they allowed them to do that? How dare you tell someone they can't return to their home? How was that even able to pass?
Israeli Minister of Heritage said, quote, the north of Gaza Strip more beautiful than ever. Everything is blown up. It's flattened. Simply a pleasure for the eyes. We will hand over lots to all those who fought for Gaza over the years. I'm not done. The Israeli Minister of Agriculture said, quote, we are now actually rolling out the Gaza Nakba. Deputy Speaker of the Knesset said, quote, we all have one common goal, erasing the Gaza Strip from the face of the earth. Those who are unable will be replaced. Israeli Army Coordinator of government activities in the territory, speaking of the Palestinians living in Gaza, said, quote, human animals are dealt with accordingly.
See?
And the Israeli Army Reservist said, quote, don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers, and children. These animals can no longer live. Let them drop bombs on them and erase them. Mr. Speaker, I would like to submit for the congressional record, as you know, the entire South African genocide case against the International Court of Justice. There is simply time to save lives, to stop the Israeli government from carrying out the genocide in Gaza.
Okay. So that's another example of some of the statements that Israel has made. I wanted you guys to hear that as well. And then I want you to hear about this comparison in reference to the Bosnian genocide, because, you know, everyone may not remember this, but this was in reference to Bosnia and Yugoslavia, where they did actually declare that Yugoslavia was committing genocide against the Bosnian people. Bosnian refugees were permitted entry into the United States. But the U.S. government is not willing to permit entry of Palestinian refugees into the United States. So again, you see what I was saying again, how it's very different when you're European. But they're making the comparison between what is happening in Gaza and what happened in Bosnia, what happened to the Bosnian people. Go ahead and smash that like button. I don't think I've said this in stream yet. Smash that like button if you haven't had a chance to do so. And if you're new, don't forget to sub and share. All right, let's bring in the Bosnia part, because this is what I want people to really get. We've been here before.
The requested measures seek to reverse the Bosnia case. When provisional measures were ordered in that case, the armed conflict was still in progress. The allegations in that case were similar to those made in this case. Bosnia and Herzegovina specifically requested a provisional measure requiring Yugoslavia to cease and desist from any and all types of military or paramilitary activities against the people, state, and government of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But the court did not grant it, even though, unlike in this case, an ongoing genocide was said to be in progress on the territory of the very state seeking provisional measures, and both parties to the conflict were parties to the case. The court said expressly that it refused because such a measure would be for the protection of a right that could not form the basis of a judgment in exercise of jurisdiction under the Genocide Convention. There is no reason to depart from that case law.
So you see how they're comparing it to what happened in Bosnia. So it says, this was from Al Jazeera, a lawyer representing Israel, Christopher Staker, told ICJ judges the arguments about Gaza are similar to those made in the Bosnian genocide case, but the court did not order an end to military activity then. However, in reference to the Bosnia case, the difference is you have Israel out here making blanket statements, which I just played multiple of them for you, just blatant statements about wanting the Palestinian people to be gone. So see, that wasn't even a good example. I see what they're trying to do. Well, when it came to Bosnia, you guys didn't da-da-da. Yeah, but you're supposed to learn from the past and not repeat those same mistakes. Two, you have Israeli officials making blatant racist and genocidal statements that they wanted the Palestinian people gone, and they're on record doing so. So the Bosnia thing, it does not work in Israel's favor the way that they think that it would. Now, here's another defense of Israel. This is crazy, man. This is crazy. Because see, now they're trying to blame South Africa for having relations with Hamas. I kid you not, guys. Listen to this. Everything is Hamas, by the way.
If there are any provisional measures that should appropriately be indicated here, they are indeed with respect to South Africa. It is a matter of public record that South Africa enjoys close relations with Hamas.
They kill me with this, man. They kill me with this. Everything is Hamas. Everything is Hamas. If you disagree with Israel, you must have relationship with Hamas. This is the wildest thing I've ever heard. Wildest thing I've ever heard. How dare you sit up there and you point your finger at this country that actually went through apartheid and know what it's like. They know what apartheid looks like. And they see what's happening with the Palestinian people and the Israelis, and they see that Israel is an apartheid state. So how can you sit up there and point your finger at these people? How can you sit there and do this? Now they're throwing Africans under the bus. I've seen it all, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen it all. Let's blame those African folks and say that they're friends with Hamas. They just tell lie after lie after lie.
Despite its formal recognition as a terrorist organization by numerous states across the world. These relations have continued unabated even after the October 7th atrocities. South Africa has long hosted and celebrated its ties with Hamas figures.
This is wild. This is wild. And let me tell you what Israel has done. Israel supported the apartheid in South Africa. Do you know that? Israel actually agreed with it. Ay, ay, ay.
Including a senior Hamas delegation that incredibly visited the country for a, quote, solidarity gathering just weeks after the massacre. In justifying instituting proceedings, South Africa makes much of its obligations under the Genocide Convention. It seems fitting then that it be instructed to comply with those obligations itself, to end its own language of delegitimization of Israel's existence, end its support for Hamas, and use its influence with this organization so that Hamas...
Notice how everything is ending the existence of Israel, but Israel has no problem ending the existence of other people.
Hamas permanently ends its campaign of genocidal terror.
I'm telling you guys, I've heard it all. I've heard it all. And to me, it's just, There's one more piece that I do want to play in reference to Richie Medhurst, and then I'm going to tell you what else is happening in reference to what South Africa plans to do in reference to the United States' role in this war. Richie Medhurst was actually on Press TV. I want to show you what he said in reference to the ICJ case.
Hearing the evidence in this courtroom for once, for the first time, I mean, it's really having Palestinians' voices heard across the world. And it's no wonder that mainstream media, not one channel, the BBC, Sky, or CNN, bothered to live stream the world's highest court talking about the world's most important political event and war. And so just the fact that these crimes are brought to light is already a victory for the Palestinians. Israel is losing on the battlefield. They have failed to achieve a single objective. Its economy is in tatters. They are under embargo by Yemen, and their image is now also ruined internationally. Hearing
spot on. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, their image is ruined. Like, this is just, oh God. Because see, they had racist ass Netanyahu do a lot of talking. His administration is pretty racist too. And people started to see Israel for what it really is. What it really is. Now, before we get into what South Africa plans to do in reference to the United States, I just want to take you back to a moment so you can see something that Joe Biden said. Now, this was back in 1992. It was the AIPAC speech. So I want you to understand why they're going to do what they're going to do. Because the thing is, Joe Biden never wanted the Palestinian people to have any type of peace or freedom. Old videos come back. You know, there's a book called They Sometimes Come Back. Isn't they come back sometimes? I don't know. Is it Stephen King? It's either Stephen King or Stephen King's crazy too. Don't follow him on Twitter either. His politics is all off the damn play. Way bad. Just don't follow Stephen King for politics. You can read his books. Read his books. But they sometimes come back, right? Listen to what Joe Biden said.
I don't care what your position is on the settlements. As my friends from Israel can tell you, I've made no bones about what my view is privately to the Israeli government and leaders. And I would make my views very known loudly were I an Israeli. We are now at the peace table, quote unquote, with unclean hands because there is the feeling abroad in this administration, among some in Congress, that somehow we owe an obligation to our Arab brethren to have Israel, quote, be reasonable. But think about it for a minute. Why is there any incentive for the Arabs to make any compromise in the peace talks? Why, if they know that they must only wait for the United States will do their bargaining for them, why would they compromise? Why would they be reasonable?
So you see that? Biden's AIPAC speech in 1992, shouting his denunciation of Bush's efforts to stop illegal settlements and to push Israel to negotiate with Palestinians for peace. Joe Biden never cared about Israel building the settlements. He was never against it. Joe Biden never cared about the Palestinian people being removed from their homes. This is 1992. And you see where we are now. And I've shown you this before, that Joe Biden has taken the most money going all the way back to 1990. When you look at open secrets, Joe Biden took the most money from the Israeli lobby. of any senator, Now, take that message, and then you see where we are today. He has no problem giving Israel weapons. He won't call for a ceasefire because he's already bought and paid for by the Israeli lobby. He never cared about the settlements. Now, all this is important because South Africa also plans to hold the U.S. accountable. I don't know why that played. To hold the U.S. accountable as well. Listen to this. A group of South African lawyers have written to the U.S. president warning his government that they intend instituting proceedings against them for being complicit in ongoing international crimes perpetrated by Israel against the people of Palestine. And here's that letter here. And this was January 2nd that they put this out there. And it says the president of the United States, Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and it also mentions Anthony Blinken. This is who it's addressed to, right? And also Speaker of the House, James Michael Johnson. And it was sent via email, and it shows their email addresses. And this is just very damning, you guys. Notice of intention to hold the government of the United States, America, liable and complicit for the ongoing international crimes perpetrated in Israel/Palestine against the Palestinian people. We, together with a group of lawyers from South Africa, act on behalf of all the Palestinian people who are directly affected by the ongoing international crimes and displacement perpetrated by the Israeli government and its armed forces since, but not limited to 1948, for reasons more fully expressed below. I'm just going to highlight some of these. It also mentions here, we hereby place the government of the United States on notice that we intend to bring legal proceedings against the U.S. government based on overwhelming evidence that the U.S. government has and is aiding, abetting, and supporting, encouraging, and providing material assistance and means to Israel and the IDF. This conduct by the U.S. government has enabled and continues to enable Israel to engage in international crimes against the Palestinian people. These crimes result in, among others, the displacement of the Palestinian people from their homes and property, destruction of Palestinian property, theft of Palestinian land, and which facilitate and assist Israel in committing the ongoing and current war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and intentional killing of innocent civilians, including men, women, children, and babies, as well as elderly and disabled. Then this part goes through the historical background. It says the U.S. government's blind support for Israel, which is in excess of the past 75 years. The U.S. government has recently used, I can't see that. Is it perpetrated? I think it's perpetrated. Hard to see it. Emergency authority provisions to provide 14,000 tank shells, among others, to Israel without congressional review. It goes into that extent there. It also says U.S. policy and international law require American weapons transferred to foreign governments, including Israel, are used in a manner consistent with protecting civilian lives. The world's top international human rights organization, including the U.S. and UK-based Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have conducted and presented an in-depth legal analysis over the past several years that has found that the Israeli government is committing the crimes of apartheid and persecution as per the legal definitions in international law. And there's more there. They get into the background, etc. They also show the Balfour Declaration, which is important. This was 1917, addressed to dear Lord Rothschild. So I've read this on this show before, where it says His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for Jewish people. That's the Balfour Declaration there. So they included a lot. So again, South Africa did their homework. They really did. And honestly, if they come after the US, you really can't blame them. If they bring the US, they try to bring the US to court. You can't blame them because yes, the United States government has been giving Israel those weapons. They are complicit in a genocide and they refuse to call for a ceasefire because they are bought and paid for. This entire war does not make Israel look good. The impression and view of the state of Israel is not favorable at this point in time. And whatever favorability that it had, a lot of that has gone out the window because people see it now. People see it now. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chats, Andrew. Did Mayor Adams comment on this? I have not seen a comment from him yet. Vicious E, the case is an obvious call. Now it's just up to these institutions to decide the degree to which they rendered themselves illegitimate/obsolete. Thank you, Sparky. Great work, Sabby. Keep on trucking. Thank you for this as well. Go Yemen, fight the power. Thank you for that. And thank you for this as well. God bless South Africa. Great detail and follow up. Terrell says, Sabby, they didn't bomb hospitals. Every news network, ABC, NBC, CNN, CBS, Fox, all confirmed that Israel bombed the hospitals. Yep. Peace Dove says, Cold Pink March on Washington tomorrow. Free Palestine. Yes. Big march tomorrow. Excuse me, guys. Big march tomorrow in DC. If you can make it, I will not be there. I'm still getting over whatever this thing is. But if you can make it and go, please go. Dwayne, sorry. And I'm still a little fuzzy, so bear with me. Thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. Netanyahu had a close relationship with Hamas. He funded it. Bingo. And thank you, Varsity Sports. Bosnia was an armed conflict. This is not. Thank you so much for that. We're going to go to this next story, which is connected, and that's the Yemen airstrikes that happened. Now, obviously, if you haven't heard about this, I'd be surprised at this point in time, unless you haven't been like on social media or whatever. But this, in my opinion, is a distraction of the U.S. government. And, you know, they got the UK backing them in this. And the UK, I got to say this, sorry. I need the UK to have a backbone and to do their own thing. No shade to my peeps in the land of the U to the K. But the UK for years has continued to follow the moves of the US. Whatever the US does, the UK kind of just follows along. And I'm going to need for the UK to just stand on their own every now and then. That's it. Just stand on their own. Okay? All right. Now, I believe that the US government, part of the reason that they chose to attack the Houthis in Yemen is not just because they are blocking those weapons from getting to Israel. It is also as a distraction to take your attention away from what's happening at the ICJ. As Richie Medhurst told you, none of these mainstream media networks even live streamed it. They don't really want you to really know about it. So think about that. So we'll start with the attack that happened. I'll tell you how this could implicate Saudi Arabia in some way, shape, or form. And then also you have to keep in mind as well, Yemen has already been under attack multiple times by Saudi Arabia. Again, thanks to the U.S. government supplying them the arms to do so. And now Yemen is under attack again.
As we're following right now, a United States official tells CNN the U.S. military has carried out strikes on multiple Houthi targets in Yemen. I want to bring in our team for more information. And Oren Lieberman, you're joining us from the Pentagon. Let's get the latest from you first. This is a big deal if the U.S. is attacking targets inside Yemen. The Houthis are, of course, backed by Iran. This war could be escalating big time.
The U.S. and the U.K., to a large extent, have been telegraphing the fact that if attacks on commercial shipping lanes in the Red Sea, a critical waterway, continued, the U.S. would be compelled to act. We are now seeing those actions take place in real time. A U.S. official telling CNN that the U.S. is hitting multiple targets in Yemen controlled by the Houthis. We have seen reports of explosions in major western Yemenite cities like Al Hudaydah and several other cities there. That the likely result of these U.S. strikes, the strikes carried out by U.S. fighter jets as well as Tomahawk missiles. Those are land attack missiles launched from Navy vessels. There's also an expectation, based on comments we've seen from the UK, that they might be a part of these strikes as well. Crucially, this is not a strike on a single location. These are multiple targets, and apparently based on reports of explosions from Yemen across multiple cities. The U.S. very much trying to send a message as it works to deter further attacks on commercial shipping lanes.
So I hope you heard what he said there. Various cities. So the U.S. has been attacking various cities.
Attacks that have forced some major shipping companies to entirely avoid the Red Sea, adding thousands of miles to shipping routes. It is because of this threat to shipping that the U.S. set up Operation Prosperity Guardian with more than 20 other countries to defend the shipping lanes, but that was purely defensive. This is an offensive operation targeting the Houthis in Yemen. The Houthis had vowed that they would respond to any sort of U.S. aggression with an even greater response. We saw them just on Tuesday launch 21 drones and missiles that were intercepted by U.S. and U.K. destroyers and aircraft. So you see over the course of the last 48, 72 hours, a potential major escalation in the Red Sea and the southern Red Sea. Again, the U.S. now carrying out strikes in Yemen using fighter jets as well as Tomahawk missiles against Houthi targets. They had warned this was a possibility. And Wolf, we are very much seeing that possibility play out as we speak.
Now let's pause here for a second because I want you to remember where this guy is reporting from. This guy is reporting from the Pentagon. So just keep that in mind when you hear his talking points. Just keep that in mind.
This war could be expanding big time right now. MJ Lee, you're over at the White House for us. Has the White House said anything about this latest development?
Wolf, the White House has not officially commented yet, but I think it is worth noting how significant this action is, given that the U.S. had very much hoped that things would not devolve to this point. This has been a huge priority for the administration to essentially try to keep things in the Middle East contained. And
I don't believe that. And I'm sorry, I want to go ahead and push back against that. I never believed that the U.S. government wanted to keep things as peaceful as possible. I never believed that the U.S. government did not want the events in the Middle East to escalate. I have believed since day one, since that war started October 7th, I have believed since October 7th that the U.S. government saw this as an opportunity to go to war with other countries in the Middle East. And I told you for the longest time, I think for a long time, they've been trying to find a way to go to war with Iran as well. So I don't believe anything that she's saying in reference to the U.S. They didn't really want to escalate things. That's bullshit. If the U.S. government did not want events in the Middle East to escalate, the U.S. government would not have been supplying Israel with weapons in the first damn place. It just is what it is at this point. We got to use common sense, people. If you want something to de-escalate, you don't throw fire on it, right? You don't add oil to the fire if you want to de-escalate a situation. The U.S. government did that. They added oil to the fire by giving more weapons to Israel, which the U.S. should have never done. They should have never been a part of it. Now they come after the Houthis? Is the U.S. government crazy? Listen, these guys have nothing to lose. Yemen has been destroyed. Saudi Arabia has destroyed Yemen with the weapons that was given to them from the U.S. government. People in Yemen are still living under the rubble. These people have nothing to lose. You think the Houthis won't go fight you to the end? You think they won't come after you to the end? You think they care if they're going to die in the process? They have nothing to lose. And that's what you have to watch out for. It's not the people that are going to fight back, but they got something to go home to. It's the people that are going to fight back. They ain't got nothing to go home to. Those are the ones you got to be careful for. So the U.S. government going after them and targeting other cities in Yemen as well. This is very dangerous. And mind you, for all the criticism that people may have about the Houthis, mind you, they're trying to prevent war. They're blocking the weapons because they don't want Israel to continue a genocide. The U.S., who claims they want peace, are giving more weapons to Israel. They're continuing war. If you want peace, you don't continue war. But they're attacking the people who don't want to continue genocide.
Not have a broader regional conflict given the existing volatility in the region. It has also been a priority for the administration to not disturb the current truce in the Yemen civil war. Now, this action that we are now reporting out of the Pentagon clearly signals that the situation in the Red Sea had become completely intolerable for the U.S. and its allies. And we did see a bit of a turning point last week when a U.S. official said, following the weeks and weeks of provocations and the attacks from the Houthis in the Red Sea on these shipping vessels, that they were essentially giving the last warning, that there would not be another warning. And so given that we have seen these attacks and these provocations continue, in some ways, we were very much preparing for a different kind of response from the U.S. and its allies. Again, we haven't gotten an official word from the White House, but Wolf, as Oren was saying, given the significance of this kind of action by the U.S. In Yemen, we should expect to hear from the president in some way tonight. Wolf.
She didn't have an official word from the White House, but she had no problem going on CNN and giving her version of events. You see how this works for? She's standing here right outside the White House. She said, we don't have, like, I'm sorry, but she says we don't have the official word from the president of the United States, but she had no problem coming on to CNN and giving her version of how things went down and what is supposed to be expected. Let me show you something else. You see this map? A U.S. Air Force RC-135W aircraft has departed from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, heading towards southwest of Saudi Arabia to join the military operation against Yemen. So look at this map. Actually, I should have just stayed where I was. It was bigger that way. So this is what I want people to see, right? So this is the airspace. Here's Kuwait. Here's Iran. And you can see the planes coming through the Saudi airspace. This is why the Houthis made the statement, Saudi Arabia, if you allow the U.S. government's planes to come through your airspace to attack Yemen, we will consider this to be an all-out war against you too. Because remember, again, the Saudis attacked people in Yemen. They basically destroyed this country. So now, this is what I was saying when I said the U.S. government obviously was not trying to de-escalate. You got all these other countries involved now. They're using Saudi's airspace. Then there's this point here from Dan Cohen. I'll make it bigger because his words are tiny. Israel has been shooting fishing boats from Gaza every day for almost 20 years to destroy its fishing industry and keep it economically de-developed. Now that the Houthis are giving Israel a taste of its own medicine, the U.S. invokes freedom of navigation to attack Yemen. Another day in Biden's rules-based order. Statement from President Joe Biden on coalition strikes in Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen. So Dan is referring to this part right here. Today, at my direction, U.S. military forces, together with the UK and with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, successfully conducted strikes against a number of targets in Yemen used by the Houthi rebels to endanger freedom of navigation in one of the world's most vital waterways. So that's what Dan Cohen is referring to. But again, rules for thee, but not for me. This is the thing. Israel can get away with doing these types of things, but when another country decides to do it, it's problematic. Now, there's a tweet from Joe Biden that has been circulating again. It's from January 6, 2020. This tweet has made its way back on Twitter because people are starting to see some hypocrisy. You see, Joe Biden, when he decided to do this attack against Yemen, he didn't get approval from Congress. And there are multiple congressional members that have spoken out about it. Even Ro Khanna has spoken out about it. There are progressives that have spoken out about it. And there's conservatives that have spoken out against it. Believe it or not. I know, right? Who would have thought? People are saying it's unconstitutional. People are also saying that the president doesn't have the right to do that. I'm actually going to debunk that because we really have to clear the air here. We have to keep it real. But this tweet is back again because people have started to retweet this. And it shows Joe Biden as a hypocrite. Let's be clear. Donald Trump does not have the authority to take us into war with Iran without congressional approval. A president should never take this nation to war without the informed consent of the American people. That was January 6, 2020. But continue to tell me how they're so different. Continue to tell me how Joe Biden and Donald Trump are so different. Right now, Joe Biden, under his administration, we have the war with Ukraine. We have the Israel-Gaza war. And now we have Yemen. Now, to those congressmen and women that are saying that the president actually cannot do that, he actually can. And this is the part I think some people have not looked into, and it's called the War Powers Resolution. So when I heard all of these Congress members complaining and they were saying, that's not right, he can't do that, he did not get the approval of Congress. He doesn't really have to get the approval of Congress. This is why I told you guys foreign policy should be something that you're concerned about. You should focus on foreign policy and you should pay attention to a candidate's positions in reference to foreign policy, because this is one area where they can act on their own. Listen to this. The War Powers Resolution, also known as the War Powers Resolution of 1973 or the War Powers Act, is a federal law intended to check the U.S. president's power to commit the U.S. to an armed conflict without the consent of the U.S. Congress. The resolution was adopted in the form of a U.S. congressional joint resolution. It provides that the president can send the U.S. armed forces into action abroad only by declaration of war by Congress, statutory authorization, or in case of a national emergency created by attack upon the United States, its territories, or possessions, or its armed forces. The War Powers Resolution requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing armed forces to military action and forbids armed forces from remaining for more than 60 days with a further 30-day withdrawal period without congressional authorization for use of military force or a declaration of war by the United States. The resolution was passed by 2/3 of the House and the Senate, overriding the veto of President Richard Nixon. It has been alleged that the War Powers Resolution has been violated in the past. However, Congress has disapproved all such incidents, and no allegations have resulted in successful legal actions taken against the president. So I want to show you an example of someone who did this. Even Twitter, I was actually surprised by this, but even Twitter is actually, let me zoom out. Even Twitter is actually correcting this because so many people are saying it. So let's bring up, I know I saw this from Cori Bush. I know she was one of them that tweeted it. And I think it was this one. She was one of them. Here it is. See? So I want to show you guys because their community notes is correcting this. POTUS can't launch airstrikes in Yemen without congressional approval. This is illegal and violates Article 1 of the Constitution. The people do not want more of our taxpayer dollars going to endless war and killing of civilians. Stop the bombing and do better by us. So right here, it says Congress has acknowledged the inherent executive power of the president to take military action in response to acts of terrorism in both the War Powers Resolution and the Joint Resolution passed by Congress September 14th, 2001. So that's why it's important to actually look some of these things up. Because the president, and I told you before, this is another example, the president can go around Congress when he wants to. He went around Congress to send aid to Israel. He went around Congress to do those airstrikes in Yemen. So just keep that in mind. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. I don't think I got that one. Thank you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin hemp car. Wow. Recall rabbis were stealing organs despite them not donating. Wall Street Journal, I think, covered it. Then the fact checker said it was fake. Slate links to it here. Thank you for that. And thank you for this tip as well. Having someone read the worst crimes of Israel on a bullhorn as video of their children being bombed with those sad Palestine song music, I think would make a lot of people concerned. Link to who to call in donations to. Caleb Maupin thanked me for this leaflet, and a friend of Rachel Corey's, a Jewish professor, said all students should read it. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to get to our final story here. Oh, I didn't do the super chat. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I told you I'm struggling tonight. Thank you for the super chat. Ray Epps works for the FBI. The USA is the most gangster nation the world has ever seen. Thank you for the super chat, Ravina. Feel better, Sabby. You're such a trooper going through this sick. Yeah, I was like, I have to cover these stories, man, because I won't be live again until Tuesday night. I was like, I want to cover these stories. Thank you, Sparky. Iran reclaimed their tanker, which was stolen by the West a year ago, but the West acts like Iran stole it from them. Thank you for the super chats. Truth and nothing but the truth. Shame on MBS and my Arab leaders. I'm so proud of South Africa. My prediction is the Jews in Africa will liberate Palestine, marking a gold mark for Africa and a true stance for the Jews. Interesting. Thank you for the super chat, Sean. Defending capitalism. United Kingdom equals 51st state. That's a good one. And let's give a shout out to Monroe Lockhart for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Monroe a big whoop whoop. Thank you for the super chat, Ray. Look around. We're already in World War III. Yep. Thank you, Sparky. Yemen was only blocking ships bound for Israel. U.S. actions against Yemen just blocked all ships because they've made the mouth of Red Sea into a war zone where ship insurance coverage won't apply. That's a good point. Thank you for the super chat. Freeze. Our two-party system has been controlled by a foreign government, Zionist control. U.S. politician, banks, media. I hope you can interview Dr. Shiva. Your views line up. He believes he has a method to win back the country. Yes, I've had him on here before. I've interviewed Dr. Shiva. Thank you for the super chat, Unemployed Scholar. Yemen entering the fight is a game changer. I'm serious, they have nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. Thank you for the super chat, Ray. Don't blame Joe. He can't even wipe his ass. Damn. Thank you for the super chat, New York Varsity Sports. In 2019, Representative Gabbard reported that Trump took billions from the Saudis to send U.S. soldiers to be in Yemen. Then the story disappeared. Search Trump pimping soldiers. There is something there. Interesting. Interesting. Thank you, Unemployed Scholar. Yemen is confident it will win against the U.S., UK, and other coalition members. Thank you, John. The one way that Trump is different from Biden, Trump didn't start any new wars. That's true. You're right about that. Thank you, Nick says, thank you and bless you. Thank you, Matt Miller. Thank you, Sabby and Eric. And thank you for the super chat, Jay. So will Biden go around Congress to give everyone health care? If that's the case, he could. Good question there, Jay. He could if he really wanted to do so. He doesn't want to do so. We're going to our last story tonight. There was a discussion between Brianna Joy Gray and Norm Finkelstein. And there was one part of the discussion that it reminded me of a conversation that I had with Garland Nixon over a year ago about phrases, right? So during this part of the interview, Norm Finkelstein talks about his disagreement with the slogan "From the River to the Sea," how he feels as though, in reference to the pro-Palestinian movement, that's actually not a good slogan. Bree has a different opinion about that. And what I've started to notice, and I really think maybe this is a generational divide that's happening here, because I noticed the conversation that I had with Garland Nixon about defunding the police. I noticed Garland Nixon said it was a bad slogan and it gives people the wrong idea. And I was like, well, no, it means to defund the police and put. He was like, yeah, I know. He said, but it just wasn't a good slogan. Whereas it seemed like more people from my generation seem to be more okay with it. So is it a generational thing in the sense that maybe people of younger generations, maybe we're not so focused on a slogan of a movement? Let's get into this conversation, because I thought this actually ends up being a little bit somewhat of a debate, so to speak. The interview didn't start out that way, but it's this particular piece here where they start to talk about the slogan.
Now, I was talking specifically about college campuses. And so the question is, should we be defending full freedom of speech, or should we be defending restrictions on speech in the name of hurt feelings? And I think it's intellectually bankrupt, and it's politically a disaster. And that's why it now backfired. So now they can use the argument that Claudine Gay was insensitive to the feelings of Jewish students. And unfortunately, the so-called left, which I don't believe is a left, the so-called left handed that argument on a silver platter to the Ackmans and the other apologists to the state of Israel. It wasn't a disaster.
But drill down, Norman, if that were Ackman's only leverage, if his only tool was to say, I got you. I flipped my argument back on you. Now you're being insensitive to Jewish students. And so therefore Claudine Gay has to go. You don't believe that that would have been enough, right? It's not.
Let me pause there for just a second. Just to clarify, because I don't want people to get confused. And I know I've mentioned this on another episode before, but I want to mention it again, just in case you didn't see that episode. Claudine Gay actually did tell the students not to use the phrase "from the river to the sea." She did actually condemn that phrase. However, by the time she did that, I think it was too late for people like Bill Ackman. And also, she didn't punish them the way that he thought it should have been. Basically, she didn't go as hard at them as people thought she should have, as Zionists thought that she should have. So I did just want to add that because I don't want people to assume that she did not condemn that. She actually did. There was an article on the Harvard Crimson where she did condemn the phrase and everything. So just FYI.
Not that. I mean, I take your point. He was able to deploy that as a rhetorical device in the furtherance of his agenda, the same way he was able to deploy the plagiarism accusations. But what it seems to me is that he's the ground zero problem here is that he's a billionaire and that he was going to root around in the mud until he found something that was going to justify his goal.
Brianna, you're totally right. But that's why I used the expression, why hand it to them on a silver platter? Why make it easier for them? Why use a slogan, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, where it can lend itself to the interpretation of, we're getting rid of all the Jews.
So, see, this is the same. I have to go back and watch. This is the same, similar thing to what Garland Nixon had said to me in reference to the slogan, defund the police. He's like, why use that phrase? Because it makes people think, oh no, all the cops are going to be gone and no one's going to protect us. And the argument I gave to Garland Nixon is I said, well, cops don't really protect us anyway. Police solve 0.02% of crime. So they're not really protecting us in the first place. But with this particular issue with the pro-Palestinian movement, my whole thing is like, I guess like when Norm says, well, why give that to them on a silver platter? Like, I don't care about the slogan. And I think that's just where I kind of stand. I don't care about the slogan. If I see that people are being oppressed, that their water is what 90% dirty water is what Israel is allowing them to have, that Israel can cut off the electricity whenever they want to, and they have before. If I see that Israel has been starving these people, they've oppressed these people, they've occupied them, they fenced them in, and they've taken people out of their homes, and they're still kicking people out of their homes in the West Bank. To me, the last thing that I'm worried about is the slogan. I'm not thinking about no slogan. And another thing I want to bring to attention as well, I get what Norm is coming from, but the other thing I want to mention is that it doesn't matter what slogan you use. Anything that you use against the state of Israel is going to be deemed as anti-Semitic. That's the thing. That's the thing that people have to understand. You can make up a whole new slogan. There's a protest tomorrow in DC. It's going to be a huge one. They can come up with a whole new slogan. But if it's against the state of Israel, Zionists are still going to call it anti-Semitic. So you can try to tailor this however you want to appease the Zionists. But if I'm out there marching in the streets, I'm not trying to appease the Zionists. See, that's the thing. I'm not trying to appease the Zionists. I'm not trying to appease any racists. I'm not trying to appease any of these people. I'm standing up for the rights of people who are oppressed. And if that means that some people get their feelings hurt, then they just get their damn feelings hurt. Period.
You can make a simple statement. Equal rights for Palestinians in Palestine. That's not open to sinister
So we can talk about this.
Yes, but they will push back against that too, Norm. Someone like Netanyahu will push back against that, and Netanyahu will say, well, that means that the Israelis will have to leave. If we give equal rights to the Palestinian people, then what does that leave for us? You see where this goes? This is the kind of statements that they'll use. Well, we can't do that because then we won't feel safe. That's the thing.
Slogan. If you really want to talk about the slogan, we can talk about the slogan. I disagree with you about the slogan. I think specifically in the instance of Palestinian rights, because there's so much slipperiness and hasbara about what the quote unquote solution is, and so many Zionists hide behind the complication of it, and how if you say you want a one-state solution, well, how are you going to affect that? If you say you want a two-state solution, how are you going to affect that? There's so many settlements. There, it's so difficult. It's so complicated that, frankly, I think there is more power in rooting your call to action in the fundamental rights of Palestinians. Palestinians shall be free, and so you are forced to defend why you think the conditions they are living in under currently, which have been described as violations of how many human rights laws by all of these human rights organizations, actually is tantamount to freedom. Actually can be defined as freedom. It's on you to do that. If I make the simple put forward the simple proposition that Palestinians, wherever they live, anywhere on the universe, deserve freedom and equal rights in society.
Right. But you recognize, let me give you a historic example. Take the case of South Africa. There were two major tendencies within the South Africa liberation movement. There was one with the, obviously, the African National Congress, which called for one person, one vote. And then there was a second group, led by, I guess, Robert Sobukwe, if my memory serves. And that was the Pan-African Congress. And that called for South Africa for Black people, that the white people should go back to Europe. That was their argument. It was not completely illogical, obviously. However, the slogan, the African National Congress slogan, one person, one vote in one country, that was the one that won out. And that slogan was one that the international community would be amenable to. The idea of expelling all the white people in South Africa was the international community did not consider that legitimate. Now, you might think it was legitimate. And as you know, that is what happened in Algeria. In Algeria, all the whites, what were called the pied noir, the black legs, because they wore black stockings or black boots. I think it was maybe black stockings. They left about 1 million, the 1 million non-indigenous Algerians, they went. So they went back to France. Among them, for example, Albert Camus. And Albert Camus refused to support the Algerian liberation movement. He famously said, when he won the Nobel Prize, he was asked about, because it was a very brutal war. The French killed about at least 1 million Algerians. About 6,000 French were killed. It was a typical colonial war with the typical numbers, the typical disparities, which we see now in Gaza. And Albert Camus, who played the role of, the conscience of France, he was asked, why aren't you denouncing what the French are doing in Algeria? And he famously replied, I love justice, but I love my mother more, because his mother still lived in Algeria. So I love justice, but I love my mother more. And so these slogans and their precision, they have real repercussions. And so
I feel like this is one of the reasons why movements don't take off, is because there's always something, right? Like, no, that's not the right slogan. No, that's not the right message we want to put out. No, we should only work with these people and not these people. No, we should not do this. We should do that. And this actually prevents us from having any type of radical, just freaking rage fest, like class movement in this country. That's why we can't have it. Because it's always that people always come in and like, well, no, I don't like that slogan. No, I want to be a part of this, but I don't want you to do any of these things that are being mentioned. Next thing you know, a whole year has gone by and the movement has never kicked off. In this particular example, by the way, though, obviously this movement has been up and going. And why do we need to now change the slogan now after the movement has already been going and people are protesting all across the world? Now, all of a sudden, we have to change the slogan? No, as I told you, it doesn't matter when reference to Israel. It does not matter what phrase you use. They are going to deem it as anti-Semitic because you are calling out the state of Israel. That just is what it is at this point. Also, if you now in turn change that slogan, you are now giving people like Zionists like Bill Ackman a win, because that's exactly what he wanted you to do. He already came into the academic spaces and made demands at the universities that he's no longer attending. And this speaks to the danger of a billionaire being able to come in and make decisions at academic institutions. Now you're going to let them infiltrate your movements and tell you how to talk in your movements out in the streets too? We really have to think about this. We really have to think about it.
I believe
Camus being a short-sighted schmuck does not the point make. I'm sorry, you cannot. I think that actually proves my point. You cannot base a movement, especially a movement that has generated organically slogans that have captured the hearts and minds of millions, including over 66% of Americans who already agree with the call for a ceasefire. We're sitting here criticizing a winning movement for not having a slogan that's sufficiently inclusive.
I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call it. The question is not, when the whole issue. I can't discuss it now because it would take us too long. But when the whole issue of Black Power came up, and that slogan, I know, was Stokely Carmichael joined the march, I think, from Selma when he started to shout Black Power, and it was a big event. And Martin Luther King had very deep discussions with Stokely Carmichael. And he said it's not a good slogan because he said Black Power will convey the idea of we want your power, Black power versus white power.
I'm sorry, but again, I feel like some of those people might have been infiltrators in these movements. I really do, because the thing is that even when he's talking about the Black Power movement, for people back then to say, well, maybe I don't like the slogan because it implies this, it implies that. You have to understand, like, Black people were an underclass in this country at that point in time, did not have the same rights. Like this was not that long ago. That's the thing. Like, when people talk about the civil rights movement, they make it seem like this was like 100 years ago. This was not that long ago. So to me, it's just like, let me get this straight. Why are we going soft on colonizers? Why are we going soft on them? I don't think we should soften our language for the state of Israel, because I think it's an illegitimate state. And I think it's full of colonialists who kicked those Palestinian people out. And the ones that are left there are being tormented. Same thing with the Black Power movement. We should not go soft on colonizers, period. We can't keep trying to find a way to, we cannot continue to try to find a way to appease the very people that have been oppressing us. We can't appease oppressors.
And he said, you can read about it in Cornel West's collection called The Radical Martin Luther King. King argued that you should use this. I understand where Black Power is coming from. He said, I have no problem with that. I understand the slogan. I understand the feeling of powerlessness, which now results in the desire for power. He said, I get all of that. He said, however, I think we should use the slogan of Black consciousness rather than Black power.
Black consciousness. This was to raise my fist in the air and write Black consciousness on a t-shirt. Norm, give me a break. Black power, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be free, Black Lives Matter. Look, Black Lives Matter was the most innocuous of slogans. Hey, guys, give me a second. Would you mind if I just assert a basic truth that of all the lives in the world, Black Lives Matter too? And we had how much discourse about how that slogan hurt too many white people's feelings. Because at the end of the day, it's not a logical objection to any of this. It's a fundamental rejection of the premise that Black Lives Matter and that Palestinians deserve to be free. And guess what? An hour.
Let's pause here for just a second because he brought up Black Lives Matter, right? What was the counter to that? See, this is what I'm trying to tell you. It doesn't matter what phrase you pick. The counter to that was all lives matter. People said all lives matter, and they were against the whole Black Lives Matter thing. All lives, right? So taking the focus specifically off of Black people and saying, let's just say everyone's life matters. Like that's what they were doing, right? To try to get your attention away from how Black people were being treated by the police. But the thing is, to that point, it does like that. Norm just kind of proved my point, which is the fact that it doesn't matter what slogan you choose. They will either Democratic Party will try to co-opt the slogan if it's beneficial for them. Other people will counter the slogan, especially if they feel that they're not included as part of it, regardless, whatever you pick.
Or so ago, Norm, you sat here and you said, I forget, you read a quote from one of these, but it wasn't Philip Roth, it was the other person that you were quoting. You said something along the lines of, if you don't believe, the inheritance that you have is Jewish supremacy. And if you let go, if you do not believe in Jewish supremacy, you're base, you're an animal, the options are supremacy or inferiority.
Every Jew feels it, he said. They may try to suppress it, but they feel it.
Right. And here's the point that I'll take. I don't think that people should have supremacist worldviews, whether they're Jewish or Black or Goyish or whatever they are. However, I do think that when you are a historically marginalized group without your own land, and this I identify very strongly with for both Jews and Palestinians, frankly, as a Black American. I strongly believe that when you are a historically dispossessed group who does not control your own government, does not control your own media, who has no ability to set the tone, who doesn't have your own educational institutions, does not have the ability to control your own destiny and create a reputation for yourself without the influence of people who literally profit off of your degradation. That you have to find a source of your own self-esteem somewhere, or you do become an animal. You do buy into the prevailing view of who you are, and to be a minority in this country, and I'm sure it is true of Jews facing persecution historically around the world and Palestinians scattered throughout the diaspora, that every day you wake up and you have to find some source of self-esteem to shield yourself against the onslaught of rhetoric that's telling you that you are nothing and you deserve nothing. And so these slogans are not just about how white people feel or how your oppressor feels and whether or not it makes you comfortable. It's a resource for the members of the community to find some sense of solidarity and confidence to continue an uphill battle that they are not likely to see the end of in their lifetimes.
I hear.
See, that's the point that I was making. It's not about, sometimes not every movement is going to make everybody feel comfortable. Some people will feel uncomfortable if they're not included. They're like, hey, what about me? Some people feel uncomfortable if it's something that they don't really want to see or hear about. I don't know. Americans are weird. Like, I've lived in other countries. People here become uncomfortable sometimes in ways that you just should not be uncomfortable. We're a country, this country in particular, we are a people in this country. We're not even comfortable enough with our own sexuality. We're not even comfortable talking about sex in this country. Am I wrong? Think about it. You go visit some of the other countries. Go visit some of the other countries. They're not ashamed to talk about these things. We can't even talk about that. You can't do anything, right? No. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about that. We're just not comfortable. People in this country just become uncomfortable for the oddest things. Like weird stuff. I was on the train the other day and this guy got on the train and like he said hello to me and that made me really uncomfortable. I mean, that's us. That is this country. Like someone says hi to you, we're uncomfortable. What happened to that? Someone holds the door open for you. Oh my God. This guy like held the door open for me. And I'm like, first of all, I like totally don't know you, dude. You're like a stranger and you held the door open for me. And it like really creeped me out. Like who does that? That's us. So the thing is that we are used to being uncomfortable in this country. At the slightest little thing. You can see the rest. I am going to head out because I am quite beat. You can see the rest, the full interview. It's a long interview on bad faith. It's billionaires' anti-Palestine attack on academic freedom. And that portion I was covering there is when they talk more about the slogan. That's closer towards the end, but it's like 2.5 hour interview there. So check that out. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at some of the comments in the chat. Valley Girl Sabby. It's just, it's just things I hear people say. All right, let me get these super chats here, and then I'm going to rest my voice and stuff this weekend. Thank you for the super chat, Sparky. From the river to the sea was okay when it was a Zionist slogan. Now that it's been co-opted by Palestinians, suddenly it's bad. Thank you, Sparky. Sabrina, you're absolutely right about whatever the Palestinian slogan. No matter what it is, Zionists will twist it. Thank you for the super chat, JNCC. Thank you for your great work. Thank you. Thank you, James. We need to speak more on Britain's involvement. Hashtag Balfour Declaration. That's right. Thank you, Sparky. Norm's great, but he's twisting the slogan too. Thank you, Elizabeth. Insight Gem. Want less war equals 0 weapons from the U.S. And thank you, New York Varsity. My problem is the way the Israeli government does their business, not with Jewish people. Ironically, the only reason I knew there was a genocide was from Jewish people. So no, not anti-Semitic. Jeez. There you go. Thank you, 007. Hope you're feeling better. South Africa rocked it. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Sparky. Much ado about minutes. Do you mean minute or Menashe? Much ado about Menashe can stifle a movement before it gets momentum. By the way, Black Power was inspiring. I remember it. Thank you, Sir Bikes a lot. Baby boomers and some Gen Xers benefited from the U.S. empire. Millennials and Gen Z got screwed by the U.S. empire. That's why Norm is thinking the way he is. Oh, that's a good point, Sir Bikes a lot. I didn't think about that. And thank you for the super chat, Unemployed Scholar. Sabukwi had better stance than Mandela. Black people in South Africa are displaced on own land by white settlers. And thank you for that. I am heading out, guys, and I'll be back again live Tuesday night. I'm going to try to shake whatever this is I'm going through. But I'm still pretty tired. I had orange juice today again, and I said before that like I hate orange juice. I don't want to have to drink that again tomorrow, so I'll find something else with vitamin C. Anywho, that's it for me tonight, guys. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you again Tuesday night. So have a good night. Keep up the fight.